Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, Josh Hicks joins us. He's a partner with McDonald Carano, former Chief of Staff to Governor Givens, here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
Retail's impact on Nevada's economy? Enormous. 8,600 businesses, large and small, employing 145,000 workers. And last fiscal year, retail paid tax on nearly $60 billion in sales. We're the Retail Association of Nevada. We support retail, we help it grow, and we mean business.
RANNV.org.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're always pleased to welcome back to the program Josh Hicks. He's a partner with McDonald Carano. Pleasure to have you back on the program, sir.
Thanks, Sam. It's always a pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's talk about this crazy election cycle and all the lawsuits. A lot of people are complaining on the liberal side that all these lawsuits have been going on and it should have all stopped and the president should have, decided that it was all over. But when I look at it and I look at the big picture, to me, if, every campaign has lawyers on both sides ready to go, fully funded, so that if there's any discrepancy that they can pick up on it. There's nothing wrong with people filing lawsuits. Isn't that the way it should be done?
Yeah, well, I think that's absolutely right, Sam. I mean, there is a process that's in law to challenge elections. In fact, you can challenge elections. You can ask for recounts, which we've saw in Clark County just recently.
On the Clark County Commission race, Ross Miller finally has been given the seat, at least for now.
And there's a process to challenge if you think there was fraud or something that went wrong in the election. And that's an important thing because, just like we saw with this election, the person who loses the election, is typically going to say, is there any reason that I lost other than I just lost? And that's why we have checks and balances. That's why we have three branches of government. And we do have a court system, and it's available to people. It happens every election cycle in one race or another. This time it was extremely high profile because it was the presidential race. But it happens just about every time. And there's a court system, and you can go in and you can put in your evidence, and there's standards to be looked at. And if you have proof that something went wrong, there's remedies for that. If you don't have proof that something went wrong, then we close the books and we move on.
One of the things that's been interesting, and as probably most people that watch this show know, I'm not a partisan, although I get equally accused from both sides of being in the other side's camp, which is fine because that puts me right in the middle. But I've said all along for the last couple of years that the court system is completely separate from the other two branches of government, and the judiciary will do what the judiciary does because they have their own traditions to uphold. And Linda Greenhouse, who was a longtime Supreme Court correspondent for the New York Times, wrote a piece a couple of months ago that was talking about don't expect, just because you have a conservative majority on the court, for it to throw all caution to the wind and suddenly be voting conservative or everything. The Supreme Court has its own traditions.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had that from day one on our Supreme Court. And stare decisis and looking at prior precedent and what's happened and giving respect to that. That's what happens. So you do hear a lot, the court's too liberal, the court's too conservative, and sometimes those things manifest themselves in little ways, but they typically don't make big sea changes to the way the court looks at things. You've still got to if you're in a court of law, you've still got to make your case. The judges are independent of the other branches, which is exactly how it should be. That's why we've set it up. And they look at the evidence and they look at the rules and apply it accordingly and then issue a decision. And they're bound by the Constitution, they're bound by the laws, just like everybody else is. So it's really truly a neutral place to go have these kind of contests. And that's exactly what I think happened. And it's, we're fortunate we live in a country that has that kind of system.
And as you look forward to the Supreme Court, do you want to see an expansion of the court? Are you comfortable with the makeup of the court now? Because one of the things that's been interesting, if you look back over history, is that presidents have appointed people to be Supreme Court justices that they considered to be their side, either liberal or conservative, and then over time, those justices went completely the other direction.
Yeah, well, it's definitely be careful what you wish for exactly that reason. We've seen that before. I mean, Republicans have put in justices who they thought were going to be conservative who weren't, and liberals have done the same thing. But to me, that's a good thing. That shows that judges truly are independent, and you put people on there who are fair-minded and good attorneys, and can look at things fairly. Then they're independent. They don't owe any allegiance, especially on the federal bench, where we have appointed judges for life. That's extremely important to maintaining their objectivity. It would be good to have that on the state level, in my opinion. We don't have that, but I still think our judges, by and large, our state judges, are independent and do a good job of looking just at the law.
So you would be in favor of implementing the Missouri plan?
I would, absolutely. I think that would be for the best. If you look at this cycle, for example, all the judges, like in Clark County, were all up on the ballot at the same time. I think that's very difficult for your average voter to...
It's impossible.
...to get a feeling for who those people are. I think most lawyers don't even know who those candidates are. Conversely, this way we appoint judges in Nevada when there's a vacancy, they're vetted, they apply to the Commission on Judicial Selection, which is a constitutional commission. They're vetted, it's all public, and 3 names are sent to the governor to fill that vacancy. I think those judges who've been appointed, and I've sat through that, being in the governor's office and interviewing those nominees, and I think the caliber of attorneys you get are extremely high when they've gone through that vetting process. So to me, if we could do that for all our judges, I think we would have higher caliber judges. Not to say we don't have many high caliber judges right now, but I think we would have even more of them. But the voters have rejected that twice. It's been on the ballot. But there's other ways to do it. There are ways to set up evaluation committees to basically score judges. That was floated around a little bit in the last year or two. So at least voters have some more objective information on who judges are and what their background is and are they qualified to be on the bench.
Yeah, I have to say that, my phone rings off the hook every election cycle, and I'm sure yours does too, being an attorney, of me calling attorneys saying, okay, tell me about the people who are running, because I don't know, and I follow politics as closely, I would think, as anybody, but it's impossible to keep up with the judicial system, and so you do end up with judges that really shouldn't be there, but, I don't think the public is prepared with their daily lives and what they're dealing with to sit down and go through, and especially in Clark County, that was an insane number of judicial races.
Yeah, it was just overwhelming. And when you put on top of that, these are positions of impartiality. So judicial candidates, they can't express opinions on things that may come before them. So the exact kind of questions that voters might care about and want to ask about, they can't answer those. So you can't really get much information on these people.
That's why I don't do those debates, because it's like having the head of the Secret Service or the FBI come on the program. You ask them a question, and the response is, well, I can't comment on a case that's currently under investigation. Oh, okay, well, that's a great half hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Exactly
that's
right.
the answer to every question. So yeah, frustrating. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back with more with Josh Hicks after this timeout.
Because of UMC, I'm putting my free time to good use.
Because of UMC, she keeps me on my toes.
Because of UMC and this guy, I'm here.
UMC, the highest level of care in Nevada.
Can't do it. Stupid, like my mom.
We can't do anything at Mommy's because you won't pay child support.
Dad said you cheated, and he's not even sure he's my dad.
Mommy said you left both of us, so she isn't gonna let me see you. I look just like my father.
I'm divorce attorney Marilyn York, and I may represent men, but hate has no gender, only casualties. Please, stop sacrificing your children in your war against your ex.
The signs and symptoms of cataracts can start out small with subtle changes in your vision. So don't wait. Be proactive and take your vision into your own hands. If you're experiencing the onset of cataracts or just have questions, contact your eye care professional or call Eye Care Associates of Nevada today. Dr. Hiss has years of experience specializing in the surgical correction of eye disorders and has completed over 84,000 vision correcting procedures. At Eye Care Associates of Nevada, we'll change the way you look at the world.
Hey, Dad? Are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this.
Wow, this stuff is great. People are gonna love it.
Yes. Yes, they will.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Josh Hicks. He's a partner in McDonald Carano and former chief of staff to Governor Gibbons. I wanted to change topics slightly. You were chief of staff to Jim Gibbons and part of that administration. And it's always struck me, and you tell me whether you feel the same way, that Donald Trump was somewhat in the same position that Jim Gibbons was in, not with the tweets and all of that, but where he was not part of the mainstream of political life in Nevada, and neither was Donald Trump. And so Jim Gibbons took a lot of heat from a lot of people. Initially, he had a lot of support from conservatives, but then after the first couple of years, that kind of dissipated when they saw that they wanted to have somebody who was more part of the mainstream. Do you regard Donald Trump as, or Jim Gibbons as being an outlier for somebody like Donald Trump, in terms of the way that he positioned himself to the public and governed?
I think in some ways, yes. I think they're very different people in many very substantive ways.
Absolutely.
But I do think that's a fair point. Jim Gibbons had a long political history. He was in the state assembly. He was in CD2 as the House member for many, many years. So he was in political circles, but he wasn't necessarily in I guess you'd call it kind of the insider in crowd of politics. So he did have that little bit of that outsider coming in piece. The Gibbons administration, it's also suffered something just like the Sisolak administration is going through right now, which is a completely unforeseen set of circumstances being thrown at you. Sisolak's got the COVID situation and everything that's come with that. Governor Gibbons had the Great Recession that started in 2007, right after he took office. Those make it harder, and I think you have maybe a bit of a shorter leash with everybody and your supporters or potential supporters when you have situations like that. But I do think that was certainly a challenge for Governor Gibbons when he came in. He was a little bit more of an outsider, and that can be good, but that can also be when you're out there trying to raise money, when you're out there trying to make sure people have your back in tough times, it can be a little bit tougher if you're the outsider.
And also, as President Trump saw now, of course, President Trump deliberately picked a fight with the national media Jim Gibbons was attacked by the media from before he was elected. And in fact, it was almost a miracle that he was elected, but he was. But those attacks never ceased throughout his entire time. And in fact, this was probably one of the few places he could come and feel comfortable that we were at least going to talk about policy.
That's true. He was attacked quite a bit.
It's an understatement.
Sometimes it's hard to look at things today where elected officials are not really criticized for something and not think back and think, I think the governor I worked for would have been absolutely crucified for that. He was hit left and right for just about everything you could think of. And I'm still not exactly sure, why that was, but I think part of that was the outsider piece that you talked about.
Yeah, and I mean, he had a conservative philosophy, and for the most part, I'd say 99%, that's the way he chose to govern for the 4 years. So what you elected was what you got. But when people look at him and think that he wasn't a smart guy, this is a guy who had a law degree, a geology degree. He was a qualified pilot. He was a pilot in the Guard, fighting over in Iraq. This was not a stupid man by any stretch of the imagination, but he took a lot of heat.
He did. No, he was a highly qualified person. He dedicated a significant part of his life to his country and to his state, and he did take a lot of heat. And I think there is definitely, when you look at some elected officials, they have better relationships with the mainstream media many times, and some don't. And I think Governor Gibbons just didn't really have that, and maybe that is something he could have worked on a little bit better.
The other thing is that we have seen with our current governor and the previous governor a real reticence to even interact with the media. I mean, if you think about how many and I don't care about Newsmakers. If the governor doesn't want to come on Newsmakers, it's fine with me. We will do just fine with no problem. Love to have him on, but it's not a big deal. But I would love for this governor and our previous governor to have done way more interviews with the press where you can sit down for half an hour and answer questions about what's going on. I think that's really important. I talked to one of the kingmakers in Nevada a year or so ago, and he told me that he would never represent any client that was running for governor who would not agree to sit down with the media. I think that's a terrible mistake.
Well, communication is extremely important. That's one thing I learned in my administration. I think the Sisolak administration is experiencing that right now too, especially when times are tough. You've got to be in communication with your constituents, and you do that through the media. You've got to explain what you're doing and why you're doing it, and there's typically a good reason. I think Governor Sisolak really struggled with that. I think he's done a little bit better job of getting that message out now, but explaining, for example, should we cut more spending or should we raise revenues, and why? And getting out and talking about that constantly, that's important. And if you don't do it, people get suspicious, people get nervous, and it causes problems.
Well, and I think that one of the things that would have been very helpful to Governor Sisolak, and still could be, is that there are a lot of questions about some of the rules and regulations that have been made where we just had the court's rule on the church situation, so now churches are on an equal standing with casinos in terms of being, that sounds ironic, but constitutionally it appears to be correct that you shouldn't limit the number of people who are able to go to church when you're allowing a certain amount of people to go to casinos. If the governor were to sit down and with whoever, any of the TV stations, any of the radio stations, any of the newspapers, and have that conversation, it will be so helpful for people to understand what the thinking is behind some of the rules and regulations that are coming out. And he was on this program quite a few times before he became governor, and he's fine at doing it, so I'm not really sure why he's not able to do it now. Anyway, that's my beef, not yours. Let's take a break. We'll come right back with Josh Hicks after this timeout.
Dimitri Prine here for Design Outdoor. Come visit Design Outdoor's store and backyard to see our wide selection of fire pits, barbecues, and pizza ovens, natural stone water features and fountains, and frost-proof pottery. Our store and backyard are located at 11600 South Virginia, just north of DeMonte Ranch Parkway. Visit designoutdoor.com or call us at 851-9499.
One of the most psychologically damaging things parents can do to children in divorce
is disparage one another, which is why I can't believe I even have to make this commercial. Half of your kids' genetics come from this person you're spewing hate about. Your children have the right to love you both, but more than that, they deserve to love themselves.
Marilyn York might be a men's rights divorce attorney, but this is for every selfish parent. Shut up.
Hi, I'm Dave Newman. Remember me? I used to be the house detective, and now I'm a realtor, full-time at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates. A lot of people ask me, how's the market? You know what? It's fantastic. If you're even kicking around the idea of buying or selling, give me a call. Let's talk about it. Call me at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates and just ask for the guy who used to be the house detective, Dave Newman.
Everyone is talking about opioids, but they're not the only drugs that can be harmful if taken in large quantities or not as prescribed. You also need to be aware of side effects from anxiety drugs, muscle relaxants, sleep aids, and stimulants. Mixing prescription drugs with other drugs or alcohol can be dangerous. If you take Ambien with a glass of wine, it may be enough to stop you from breathing. Prescribed drugs can be just as dangerous as illegal drugs. Take medications only as directed.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Josh Hicks. He's a partner with McDonald Carano, former Chief of Staff to Governor Jim Gibbons. The sales and gaming tax proposals by the Clark County Education Association, you know, they passed the public, now they're going to the legislature. Is the legislature just going to punt?
Well, that's a good question. The legislature has options on those kind of things. They can punt, and they'll just go on the ballot in 2022. And the voters will decide. They can put alternatives on the ballot, so they can, and whichever one gets the most votes is going to proceed. So it's possible that the legislature could, put in a lesser tax rate to try to soften the blow and work out some kind of deal that way. Maybe earmark the funds for certain things. That's kind of a tried and true tactic in other states when they have to do competing ballot measures. But one way or another, it looks like something's going on the ballot in 2022 because once those are certified and sent over, there is no process to withdraw those petitions at this point. That doesn't mean that the Legislative Council might not figure out some way to withdraw it, but that's the state of the law right now.
It's one of those things where if you look at the big picture and put it into context, yes, the gaming tax in Nevada is low. But isn't that one of the reasons why major gaming companies like Genting and Wynn and all the others are investing huge amounts of money in Las Vegas is that, they can win more by doing business in Nevada and employing a lot more people in Nevada and investing their money into all these other companies in Nevada. If you raise the gaming taxes to the point where it doesn't make sense, don't they just build elsewhere?
I think that's absolutely what they do. They build elsewhere, they scale back. Gaming, whether you think it's the right industry for Nevada's future or not, is a huge part of our economy. It's a huge employer. It's a huge growth feature for us, especially down in Las Vegas.
You don't ever see it going away, do you?
No, I don't.
Because I don't either. I mean, it's great to talk about diversification, and even when people talk about diversification in Northern Nevada, yes, the economy is diversified in Northern Nevada, but gaming is still a major player in Northern Nevada, and gaming and tourism. I mean, I think you have to expand it. I think the chances of that ever going away, I don't think so. I was talking with Tick Segerblom about incentives and whether he'd like to see, a Tesla or something like that coming to Apex in North Las Vegas. He was adamantly no. He's talking like Dina Titus was with Ring Around the Valley, to see infill, but not see, warehouse jobs or automotive jobs. Doesn't seem to make sense to me. I mean, you do want to have some kind of diversification, do you not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, you look at the benefit that we've seen from Tesla in Northern Nevada. I mean, there were a lot of incentives and abatements that went away there. There were jobs created, but probably more than anything, it puts Northern Nevada on the map as a place for these these new tech kind of big companies to come look at for things. And I think that helps. It helps other industries start coming here. I think you've seen so much migration out of California into other states that, you know, it puts Nevada and our competitive tax situation right on the map for those kind of places. It's an easy talking point for those kind of CEOs to think, well, if it's good enough for Tesla, it's certainly going to be good enough for us. And I think that's the advantage to getting those companies in. I can see the commissioner's point that, you know, you don't want to do everything in industrial, but, you know, I think it all builds on, it's building blocks for other things. And, you know, certainly one thing we've seen too with COVID and everything else is, you know, a lot of industries can be mobile now. And we can attract not just industrial jobs, but we can attract high-paying, professional kind of job, white-collar jobs, to move, have their people move here and work out of Nevada. You know, intangible kind of industries. And I think those are the kind of things that could really diversify our economy, really bring in a lot more money and a lot more high-paying tax dollars to our state.
And as blockchain technology continues to move forward, that could be a really big player now that we're set up for it. That's where we got to leave it. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. Please come back before session, and then we can talk about some of the issues coming up for the session.
Thanks, Sam.
And we'll be right back.
Brian Culpa Photography was born in the rolling hills of Massachusetts, and now he can help you experience the stunning beauty of Nevada in a whole new way through the power of flight. Flying has always been a passion for Brian, and at Brian Culpa Photography, he can make your imagination soar. Brian has the creative mind and tools to tell your unique story. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hey, Dad? Are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this.
Wow, this stuff is great. People are gonna love it.
Yes. Yes, they will.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Pro Group Management specializes in providing industries with the necessary components to satisfy and exceed workers' comp requirements. Every business has unique needs and specific regulations. Pro Group Management stays ahead of the curve, providing up-to-date services to keep your industry in top form. Discover how we simplify your tasks, improve efficiency, and reduce expense to keep you moving in a positive direction. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
You can now watch Nevada Newsmakers on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search for Nevada Newsmakers and become a subscriber. We'll see you on the next broadcast. Thanks for watching and listening.